Hi, and welcome to the Closer's Playbook, a podcast about selling your services as a freelancer. I'm Pete Beber, here with Tyler Poole. Tyler, we were talking a little bit about a customer scenario you had where you told them no, right?
Yep.
And I was mentioning, hey, that's great. You want to qualify out customers. So today I thought we could talk a little bit more about qualifying
Sure.
customers. And just to kind of set the or share the definition of qualifying here. It's if you qualify somebody out, it's saying they're not a good fit for me to work with, or I'm not a good fit for them to work with. Either way, this isn't going to work out. Qualifying in is obviously the opposite, where it's this is what they're looking for, and my services are a great match, and they have the capacity to pay me.
Right. It's an important topic because especially with a new freelancer or somebody who is new to sales, it's all about getting to that yes, and they want the deal no matter what it is, and they're willing to go above and beyond outside of their core competencies to get the deal. And so it's something that as you get better at freelancing, as you get better at sales, you want to do so you don't end up in bad deals.
Yeah. So there was an example we were talking about earlier that you had recently, where you said, "Hey, I don't think
Sure.
this is the right fit." Can you walk us through anything that you can share
Yeah.
about that?
I've actually got
And
two.
real quick, so first time joining us, Tyler is focused on SEO, search engine optimization, and a lot of local as well. Is that
Yeah.
a little bit of local?
So I've actually got two examples. One that I qualified out, and one that I didn't, and now I'm kind of paying for it. Not paying for it. I mean, it's a client, but in hindsight, I wish I had because it would have saved myself some headache. We're recording this on a Saturday morning, and I just got an email from a client that is asking me to do something that is outside of the scope of the original project, and it's something that yes, I know how to do, but it's not an expertise of mine. It's not something that I market for. I don't apply to positions for this on freelancer websites. It's not something it's not something I enjoy doing.
And so their expectation is that you're going to be able to pick this up and run with it.
Right. Yeah. And so because of not qualifying this customer well enough, I'm dealing with things that I would rather not deal with.
All right, so help me out here. So I think this customer was before you started doing like the written statement of work or proposals. Is that right?
Somewhat.
Or
It was one that it was actually one that wasn't before I was doing all that stuff, but it was one that closed really quickly. It closed on the first call, and probably in hindsight, it closed too quickly.
Yeah. So what would you have done differently on that first call?
Well, it was interesting because during the budget part of the conversation, we had talked a little bit about background, a little bit of scope of project, but nothing had been really ironed out. And we got to budget, and he threw out a number, and I said yes.
Yeah, it was higher than you anticipated.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, it's a good number. But in hindsight, by not writing up even after the number was agreed upon, if I had sat down and said, hey, so for this number, this is what we're going to do, these are the things that this covers, these are the things that it doesn't, and actually outlined it real well, then I would have in hindsight saved myself a little bit of a headache. So
clarity,
yeah,
and expectations.
Yep, 100%. And then so to go back to the other example, we were sitting down talking, and he very clearly knew what he wanted and who he was looking for, and I was able to tell him, this isn't me.
Well, and I wouldn't sell yourself short there. You were doing the discovery as well,
Sure.
To understand their business, to understand where they were at, so you both basically came to the conclusion like, hey, this is probably not a fit for us. And you I don't think you just left it as like, hey, this isn't going to work out, best luck to you. I think you even gave them a couple of pieces of advice on like, hey, this is what I think you're looking would be more helpful for you
100%.
rather than so you left them with, hey, I'm not going to be a good fit, by the way, from what I see, from my experience, this is where you should be going. So you headed him down the right path. Even though you both qualified each other out, you left it on a good term, and he's more clear on what services you're going to provide.
Right.
So maybe there's a chance that he comes back
100%.
later, or maybe another business owner or professional that he knows who is looking for those services. Oh, talk to this guy. He was helpful.
Right. Yeah, and that's, I mean, it goes back to the whole, at the beginning of this conversation, I said one of the biggest things that new freelancers don't do or they try to close every sale, whether or not it's good for them. And who knows if not closing this sale will ever bring anything else to me. But I did give this guy some advice. I pointed him in the right direction. If I had a referral for this particular service, I would have given it to him. And I think hopefully in the future that'll come back around. Yeah. Maybe it won't with this guy, but if you make a policy of it, if you we talk about reputation pretty often. Mm-hmm. Build a reputation as a good, honest business person and telling people, yes, I can do this. No, I can't do this. And being really clear about expectations and scope of work, stuff like that will get you further in the long run than just selling every deal. And
it allows you to plant seeds too, right? So by being really clear about what you do and the impact it can have, that's a lot more memorable for somebody to be able to say, and you can ask like, hey, I know this isn't going to be a fit for you, but if you think of anybody or somebody comes to you and says, I'm really looking for this, would really appreciate if, you mentioned my name, made a connection, if you're against that, no big deal, but just to put that out there because you could land one customer out of that call and it could be lucrative. Mm-hmm. You could land one customer out of a dozen of those, but if you never ask, if you're not clear with what you can do for somebody, for a business, then it is a lot harder for somebody to refer you to somebody else as well.
So what are your favorite either qualifying questions or topics that you like to qualify?
I want to dig into the business problem. There's a couple of things, right? The business problem that we're looking to solve. Okay. So, and why is that? Like, what makes that important? And then we also want to understand, do they have the capacity to pay?
Sure.
Your rate. Right.
How do you do that? How do you approach that subject?
Well, when you understand the business need, the problem, when you understand what your services could do to fix that, and you can put a monetary value on it, or they can put a monetary value on it, then you can say like, all right, well, my services cost X, and we expect it to lead to Y revenue for you. Okay. So now you've got, it could be like 10X. Right? You can say here's what my cost is, and if they're like, oh, you know what, like I don't think we can pay that. Mm-hmm. So you can go back to like, well, here's the business. Is this not the problem? And are these projections on what we think can be done, are they off? And it's no. You want to get them kind of talking a little bit. Be like, I just don't think where we're at today, that's the level of that we could pay. We don't have the budget for it. So you can kind of get it a little bit indirectly if you want to get them talking.
And I like to, along the same scope, but after talking about the business problem, I like to delay the budget conversation by saying, so what would a successful project look like?
Great question.
And clearly let them tell you, or sometimes they're like, I don't know. And then if that's their response, if they don't clearly define it, then that gives me an opportunity to say, okay, so how does this sound? And say, these are the goals in this timeline. Does that sound like a successful project to you?
Yeah, you want to, if they don't know what success looks like on this project, that could be a red flag because there's some ambiguity there that you're going to have to address. So getting to a definition of success and the metrics that are going to do that, that's going to be really key for you to understand, because if they're like, well, success for this is 10,000 more views a month starting in the second month, you go, hey,
not realistic.
The budget that you're looking for and the services that you're going to need to do that, that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about.
Sure.
And you can level set then. You could say, hey, what you're looking for, it's going to cost more like this. And it's probably going to be more than just my services that you need. Right. And if that's the case, that might not be one that you want to take on.
Yeah, that's a good way to qualify somebody out is you run across, especially in SEO, you run across people all the time who are like, oh, I want to be on page 1 in 3 months. Like, oh, I'd like $1 million. It's just not going to happen.
And maybe for $1 million, I can do that for you.
No, yeah. Right. Well, that brings up a whole lot of penalty problems. But, I mean, there are certain things that customers need to be, to be brutally honest about and given a reality check. I mean, I'm sure we talk to people all the time where you're like, this is not realistic. You know your industry. As a freelancer, you should know your product well enough to and be confident to tell clients that this is not realistic. Yeah. The number one thing I qualify out on is some combination of poor expectations on price or timeline. I cannot rank a lawyer in New York City for $500 a month in the next 5 years, right? It's just, they're a super competitive niche, I can't do much of anything. Well, that's not true. I can't, for $500 a month, you're never going to rank a lawyer, but it might be enough for a plumber in backwoods Maine. I don't know.
So know your audience, know the industry, and that's part of that too. Is I think the two biggest things here are good questioning and proper expectations.
Yep.
So find out what are their expectations. That's going to be huge.
Sure.
Find out the business problem that you're solving, and even a lot of times, if you're working with somebody who's at like a company. What would it do for them, right? Are they gunning for a promotion? Would this help them get that promotion? Where would this fall in your priority stack, right? Are there other projects that you have going on that would push this to the bottom? What priorities do you have as an organization, and can you link this to any of those projects? If you find that they have like for SEO, if they have like this big push for 2021, because we're recording this in January of 2021. If they're like, well, we have a big growth number for 2021 and we need to get in X amount of revenue. It's a priority for the business. Okay. Well, now we know growth is a priority for the business. Can we put a number on that growth? Right. What are the expectations that the business has on growth? And then is this one piece of what you're doing, or is this the only thing you're doing? And then let's set some expectations on that. We might have to bring them down to earth a little bit. But if you've gone through that process of understanding what problem you're solving, how it's important to the business, maybe even how it's important to the individual, and you've got clear expectations on the work to be done, the expected impact, and then their budget fits your price,
sure,
you just qualified a customer in, right? You still could lose that deal, right? Because there could be others that they're looking at. We're not going to win them all, but that is one that I would say is qualified in. Right. If some of those pieces are missing, it's probably qualified out.
Right.
And move on. I've spent way too much. I've sometimes spent years working on bringing a deal to close, and then only to find out that was never going to happen because we were too far apart on an area that I didn't explore. I didn't dig into. I was uncomfortable asking a question maybe that would have told us right out of the bat, this isn't going to work.
And is there a worse feeling than throwing all that time and effort into something that never was going to?
Perfect call out, because every time I was on a call or preparing a proposal or putting a presentation together for that customer, it was time away from qualifying other customers in or out. I could have moved on.
Yeah. So you mentioned red flags earlier. What can you give me 2 or 3 almost instant red flags. And I think this is important. It's going to be different for each industry, each business, but there are some commonalities that I think we can touch on.
All right, so some red flags would be that like the person you're working with doesn't have the ability to say yes or no. They have to go sell it to somebody else. Okay.
That's a great one.
So what do you do there?
When you say that, you're talking like you're talking maybe to a regional VP and they need the VP's go ahead.
You could be talking to a lot of times the work to go hunt down to narrow things down gets pushed down the chain. Mm-hmm. And then they'll come back up the chain with, here are the couple of proposals that I've narrowed it down to.
So you want to be talking to the decision maker.
You want to be talking to the decision maker. So how do you get to the decision maker? Well,
that might be a whole nother podcast.
It could be. But if they're not the decision maker and they won't let you get to the decision maker, that's a red flag. Okay? Perfect. There's ways, we can talk about that on another episode, where ways to get to the decision maker. So that could be a red flag. If if they don't understand the business problem, the thing is, you could still win a deal without understanding the business problem. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You could win a deal just out of luck plays a big part in sales. I'm just going to say it. Luck plays a big part. Timing, right? Mm-hmm. All who you're talking to, the urgency of the problem that they have, all of these things play into whether you can win a deal or not.
Yep.
But, what other priorities do they have? Does this even align to a priority? If they don't know the priorities of the business, if they don't know the business problem that is being solved here, or attempted to be solved, then what are we trying to do? Right? If they just say, like in your case, like, well, we just heard SEO and we're like, we got to do SEO. Right. Maybe that's not the client you want to work with.
Right. Yep. That's a good red flag. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. So, decision maker, if you're not talking to the decision maker, and people will always tell you they're the decision maker.
So this is one I've got, and this might be a personal one, but it's one of the quickest things that I will qualify out for, is a client that needs saving. Like, you are they need help. Without whatever service you're offering, their business is going to go under. And you get these people. These are the people who are likely to send you 20 emails a day. They're the people who are likely to ask you to do stuff that's outside of the scope of work. And they're unfortunately the people who are least likely to pay.
Yeah, so some desperation.
Right. So if it sounds like these people are desperate, or that whatever this potential client is desperate, and this, like I said, is a personal one for me, but I don't want to try to save businesses. I'm not in that. What's the guy on QVC or whatever, the lion guy?
I don't know that one.
Well, I'm not that guy.
Okay.
And so that's a personal one for me. But it plays on a couple notes that Pete had, and it plays on the biggest one might be the lack of ability to pay. That's
Yeah, I that's a great call out. Is if it's a company who's spiraling and they're like, this is gonna save our business. Right. Yeah, you could look like a hero, or you could just never get paid, or both. Right. So yeah, I think those are a few good ones. I think qualifying out is maybe more important than qualifying in. When we're interviewing people at the company I'm at, we always say, like, the phone screens are the most important part, because, well, pre-COVID we would bring people in,
sure,
and you'd meet with a bunch of people. Well, you take those people offline. Every interview that I do, when it gets to the, we'll call it on-site, because that's what it would normally be. When you get to the on-site, I'm spending probably 3 hours on that interview, a 45-minute interview with the person. I'm doing prep work, and I'm doing maybe pre-briefs with the other people that are going to be interviewing them, and we're doing debriefs after. We are very careful about who we are. We'll even pass up many really good people to make sure that one bad one doesn't get in. Right. And I kind of look at it, we're qualifying people out. And if you think about it, it costs a lot of money if somebody gets through that phone screen and then everyone is like this person's not going to be a fit when they get on site. You've just taken potentially 3 hours from multiple people. You've taken that person's time. And you've pulled them out, and now you're not able to interview somebody else, or you're not able to go close business because we're salespeople. And so that phone screen is the most, in my mind, the most critical part to the interview. And we're interviewing potential customers. That's what we're talking about. And so it's very similar. One bad customer can take up a lot of your time. So
easy. Yeah.
We want good customers. You're going to get bad customers.
And a bad customer, you're not talking about 3 hours in a lot of cases. You're talking about weeks upon weeks of, a couple extra emails a day, an extra problem here. I mean, you could be talking hundreds of hours by not qualifying out a correct customer.
And so I really would say that qualifying out and all the questions we ask, all the discovery that we're doing, the understanding of the business problem, these are all things that help us know. And I would even one of the reasons I've told you, like, hey, maybe put it down on paper, give the proposal, and then deliver the proposal with them, walk them through that proposal. As you're putting all that together, we get off a call a lot of times and it's like, all right, I got one. This is going to be great. Then you start putting the proposal together and you start thinking through that conversation, and then you go, they said this. Maybe I need to dig into that a little bit more. Or you know what? Maybe what their expectation is not really what I'm putting here. That's why you put the proposal together, and then that's why you walk through it with them, because that's essentially your last option to qualify in or out. So when you go through that proposal, it's as much for you as it is for them.
Yeah, qualifying doesn't stop until that deal is written up. From the very first contact you have with a client or a potential client to the moment the contract is signed, you should be qualifying.
100%. So yeah, it's, I think too, I get, like, I'm in sales. I want to win every deal, right? You probably want to close everyone that comes across your desk. It's easy to get kind of wrapped up. And it's hard, at least for me, it's hard to tell a customer no and be like, you know what? I don't think this is going to be a fit, but you're probably going to save both of you a lot of effort and angst by doing it. So.
Yeah, as a beginner freelancer especially, like if you've been struggling with sales, or you don't have enough clients, it is really easy to ignore red flags and to win the deal because you need to. At the beginning, if that's what you have to do to get your business off the ground or get your freelancing, to a stable point, okay. But keep this in mind. The more clients you have, the more stable you are, and the more you want to qualify. So I think that's a good stopping point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week, and make sure to like and subscribe on all your podcast platforms and your YouTubes and all that stuff. So see you guys next week.
All right. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Peter.